Good day viewers, welcome to another edition of the Daily Strange Stories. I'm John Brown. I hope you've had a fantastic weekend and are feeling refreshed and ready for the week ahead. Our lead story for today: too much corruption and Palapala scandal haunts ANC. Thabo Mbeki reveals why he pulled out of Ramaphosa's national dialogue. In South Africa's volatile political landscape, former President Thabo Mbeki recently made a bold move that highlights deep-seated issues within the African National Congress, or ANC. He chose to pull his foundation out of President Cyril Ramaphosa's national dialogue, an event meant to bring people together to discuss the country's biggest challenges. This decision came amid growing concerns about too much corruption plaguing the ANC, with the Phala Phala scandal casting a long shadow over Ramaphosa's leadership. Mbeki pointed to problems like unclear handling of a large budget and a rushed process that seemed to ignore core principles, making the whole initiative feel less about real change and more about appearances. His withdrawal, along with other respected foundations, exposed tensions that have been building for years, tying back to scandals that continue to haunt the ruling party.
Last year, 2024, many people asked me to say something about 30 years of democracy in South Africa. There were many requests like this from the media, domestic, international, in various organizations. So I thought, no, I couldn't do these individual interviews. Rather, let me make one statement about this issue. South Africa in 30 years, and then answer questions after that. So I therefore addressed a public meeting and public address on the 30th of April last year about South Africa at 30. And having discussed everything about South Africa at 30, I then said, it seems to me that one of the things that needs to happen, because there are too many unanswered questions, it's not absence of knowledge of the problems. As our colleague, the president of the SRC, was saying, we know the problems of poverty and about this and that and the other. The problem, though, is that as a country we have not been able to solve them, these problems. Never mind our election manifestos. All of us we put out manifestos at election time, this is what we're going to do. None of them has assisted us to solve the problem, this problem. So I said, I think it is time that we get the people of South Africa themselves, the ordinary people, to get together and answer these questions. What do they think? Not political parties or whatever, but the people themselves. Let them meet and say, give an example. Why don't we have a national dialogue? The participants, for instance, in the national dialogue would be the women of South Africa. That's one constituency. So what you do, you ask a Professor Puleng Lengabola here, who happens to be a woman, to say to Puleng, can you put together a delegation of 200 women, inclusive of the women of South Africa, who must then attend as a delegation to the national dialogue. Same with the youth, same with the traditional healers, same with many people, the arts world, the people of the faith organizations, and so on. I then said in that same speech that this idea, this thing is, I'm saying this thing, but it's too big even for me. So I'm going to raise this same matter with the foundations. and say to the foundations, this is what I think. Can you people take up this matter? So I requested a meeting with them. Lutuli Foundation, Mandela Foundation, Tutu Foundation, Biko Foundation, Sobukwe, Mbeki, all of them. And said, this is what I think, this is what I've said publicly. I think you people must take up this matter. And fortunately, they agreed. So these are the people who then set about organizing for the national dialogue. Max, who is the CEO of the Thabo Mbeki Foundation, is a member of that committee. So I thought I would ask Max to come and complete an answer to this question. Which was, why did the foundations leave? And what is going to happen in the consequence of that?
Possible, most of our futures have already been destroyed, but we must not destroy the future of young people. It's in their interest that this must work. But let me do something so that everybody can understand very quickly. In explaining what happened, in the course after the head of state had announced the date of the 15th of August, we were taken to court by one of the leaders of the trade union movement and the political party. And the papers in the court were saying, we know all of you. There is nothing genuine about what you are doing. You want to use government and government money to prop up the misfortunes of the ANC. So there's nothing trustworthy about you. And then secondly, he says, I know how you comrades behave. You've got interesting methodologies of skimming money from government. One way of you going to skim this money, you're going to do what this union leader says, do self-created emergencies so that you can get money very quickly, but you don't have time, plan, and transparent process of how to spend that money. So you will spend that money within few days, and it gives you an opportunity to do all manner of wrong things about that money. And he says then the third thing is that we don't trust this process because this process is not citizen-led process. It's going to be a government-led process so that the government can deal with its own problems. So this accusation is put directly at us. Here is the problem. 5 days after that, we were asked by some participants in the process to behave exactly the same way we were being accused. And our position as the foundations was that we can't walk away from the oath that we have taken. We can't begin to say we will solve South Africa's problems when we act on unprincipled basis. We can't solve South Africa's problems when we cause all of this chaos. So in the end, this is the work Ishmael and the team we have been doing for 13 months. They arrived 3 weeks before the 15th of August. A group of people say, we've got authority, we are ready, we're going to drive this process. 2 minutes. Yeah. So So when these new people says, no, we are ready to have a convention at UNISA in 8 days, we say, but you can't. And as we're speaking, one of them says, no, here's 28 million rand, it has just come into my phone. So we said, this is exactly what we've been accused of. It's at that point then that we had to tell the head of state, says, the whole thing is not legally credible.
The national dialogue was supposed to be a major step forward, born out of an agreement among parties in the government of national unity. It aimed to gather South Africans from all walks of life to talk about pressing matters like poverty, inequality, and economic struggles. The idea had roots in earlier discussions, and some even saw it as Mbeki's own brainchild from past efforts to renew the nation. But when the time came for the first convention in August 2025, things fell apart for Mbeki and his allies. They felt the organization lacked honesty, especially around a proposed 700 million budget that raised eyebrows. Questions swirled about where exactly that money would go, with no clear, approved allocation in place. This uncertainty made proper planning impossible, turning what should have been a thoughtful process into a hasty event. Mbeki's foundation, joined by groups like the Steve Biko Foundation, the Desmond and Leah Tutu Foundation, and the FW de Klerk Foundation, issued a joint statement explaining their stance. They criticized the tight timeline, which transformed the convention into just a symbolic milestone rather than the start of a meaningful national effort. Disagreements within the preparatory task team added to the chaos, particularly over how the dialogue should be governed and directed. To fix this, they suggested pushing the event back to after October 15, 2025, giving everyone time to coordinate properly and engage deeply. They stressed that deadlines should never come before substance, and a true dialogue could not be rushed. At the center of Mbeki's concerns was the inclusion of figures like the Vice-Chancellor of China University of Technology, Professor Tinyiko Maluleke, whose role sparked controversy. Accusations had surfaced about misusing ideas for a new campus meant for youth in Sekhukhune, leaving many young people without promised access to higher education. This kind of issue fed into broader doubts about whether the dialogue truly represented honest leadership. Despite these withdrawals, President Ramaphosa pushed ahead with the convention on August 15, 2025, at the University of South Africa's main campus in Pretoria. The presidency made it clear that the 700 million rand budget was not a burden, as the university offered to host everything for free, covering venues and logistics. Costs were drawn from existing funds in NEDLAC and the presidency, with plans to reimburse them later through an adjustments budget, all in line with the Public Finance Management Act.
Today marks the first sitting of the National Convention of the National Dialogue, a space where we confront our realities openly, respectfully and constructively. This is not a partisan platform. This is a national platform. Here, no voice is too small. No perspective is too inconvenient to be heard. We are gathered to listen to each other, to understand one another, and to chart a common path forward for our country.
I said, I shall not allow the taxpayers' money that amounts to 740 million rand to be utilized. We can have this dialogue much cheaper, much lower. Costs must be the order of the day. That is what we did. And you know what? We were very fortunate. The University of South Africa, the Vice-Chancellor, the good professor, immediately said, you know what, to cut off all those costs, we'll give you this beautiful venue for free. And now we got it for free. Now, that is exactly what we are going to seek to do. We will be going around the country. We will desist from hiring halls, expensive halls in hotels, and so on. We will want to hold the various dialogues in schools, we'll hold it in churches, not in beer halls, no. And we will hold them under the tree and all that. So that is how we are going to bring the cost down, because the people of South Africa do not want us to be spending too much money on the conversations that we are going to have.
In a letter from the Mbeki Foundation's chairperson, Geraldine Fraser-Moleketi, dated August 12, 2025, the reasons for Mbeki's personal absence became even clearer. The letter addressed the executive director of NEDLAC, pointing out inaccuracies in how the event was described. It clarified that the upcoming gathering at UNISA was not the official first convention of the National Dialogue, as it had not been convened by the preparatory task team, which had been working on the process for the past 13 months. There was no such thing as a convention organizing committee or a national dialogue team within the established structure. The letter questioned who exactly was involved in these unofficial groups and how many had any real experience from the prior months of preparation. Furthermore, the letter highlighted plans for delegations to the True First Convention. The preparatory task team had identified about 30 sectors or constituencies, each meant to select their own delegates in an inclusive way. For example, some groups would send up to 100 representatives, ensuring diversity. To make it accessible, provisions were proposed for simultaneous translation in all official languages, reflecting a commitment to representing all South Africans. This level of detail showed what a properly organized dialogue could look like, in contrast to the rushed event that went ahead without Mbeki's involvement. The convention itself drew around 800 delegates from various groups, with prominent figures leading discussions. President Ramaphosa, in his communications around the time, emphasized the need for inclusion and active participation. He acknowledged that some voices felt missing and called for special efforts to include marginalized groups. The event showcased South Africa's diversity and a shared enthusiasm for debate, even if disagreements arose.
Good afternoon, everybody. Speaking in front of you, my name is Sihle Sibisi. I am a founder of a civil society organization called Kwanele Foundation. We applaud the government for bringing us together for such a dialogue. But our wish is, I heard people saying they've got an app, we can use it on the grassroots, but what about Ugogo Ekaya? Ugogo will not know how to use that app. Number two, my question is, before we talk, what are we saying about the elephant in the room, where we are sitting in our country right now outside Maponya Mall? They are torching down taxis because they are revenging the death of the e-hailing driver. What are we saying about the elephant in the room of undocumented citizens that are in the country, where South Africans, 70% of the files in our local clinics belong to non-South African citizens? I would personally like to not own a medical aid, but I'm subjected to own one because the clinics are full. What are we saying if the president of Tanzania can say spaza shops, saloons, everything belongs to the Tanzanian nation? Why is South Africa not making that stance? I had hoped that our Honorable Cyril Ramaphosa was going to emphasize on that. South Africa, we are broken. And yes, we are speaking from traumas because some of us are forced to take our kids to private schools because if a school is right across our home, they will tell us the school is full because it's full of non-South African children.
Yes.
Then we are now subjected to being financially crippled because our government, all you do is talk, but the implementation.
Thank you so much to the speaker.
Finally, my question
I'm going to ask you to wrap it up.
In our groups that you are going to put us in, will the entire cabinet that we see here be part of the plenary? Or are you guys going to leave us to discuss on our own and we come up with our own solutions, which then means there's no point of us having this discussion because you will not hear what we are saying. We are the foot soldiers. We are on the ground. All of you here have bodyguards. We don't have bodyguards. We had a colleague who came here from 3 a.m. in the morning.
All right,
We are
thank you
good
so
soldiers.
much.
We know what's happening on the ground. And if you say it's a national dialogue for us, you can't shut us down. It's sad that you are here because 2026 elections are coming. So you're trying to buy our silence.
All right, thank you so much. Let's give that a hand. And then I'm just going to pause here because this is what we want. This is the dialogue we have been called to do. We are in plenary. We're not going to go into dialogue now because I'm going to give
This
you
is
the
not a
reason.
dialogue. I have a question, ma'am.
You
I have
may
a
ask
question. No, I have a question before anybody.
Excuse me?
Listen. No, excuse me.
We will-
Excuse me. First, you need to read the pedagogy of the oppressed. This process must be dialogical. It must not be one-sided. You don't come to talk down on us here. Number one. Number two, we are 4 members of the Rastafari community here. We are all bundled up into one theme. We represent a nation of Rastafari of 3 million South African Rastafarians. We can't go under one theme. We have issues that cut across everything that needs to be dialogued here. You don't decide for us. Nothing for us without us. Simple as that. And for the last time, this is a dialogue. Spend more time listening to us than telling us what to do. Stop talking down on us.
Ramaphosa viewed differing opinions as essential to building legitimacy, breaking down barriers between us and them. He advocated for a unity based on honest talks about tough issues, leading to an agreed program of action rather than just feel-good sentiments. However, not everyone shared this optimism. Critics like the Good Party's National Youth Chairperson, Caden Arguile, described the dialogue as undermined by poor planning, missing invitations, collapsed communication, constant schedule changes, and shortened discussions. This left many underrepresented communities without a chance to be heard, turning what could have been a platform for citizen-led solutions into something less effective. Arguile believed that with better structure, the process could tackle crises like poverty, crime, corruption, and inequality, strengthening democracy and amplifying grassroots voices. He warned that without discipline and accountability, it risked becoming just another talk shop that deepened distrust, though he held out hope that more inclusive dialogues could foster understanding and unity. This fallout with Mbeki and the foundations revealed strained relations between him and Ramaphosa, echoing deeper problems within the ANC. The party has long grappled with corruption, which has eroded public trust and affected everything from service delivery to economic opportunities. Corruption in South Africa often involves the misuse of public resources for personal gain, including bribery and favoritism. It reached alarming levels during Jacob Zuma's presidency from 2009 to 2018, a period marked by state capture where powerful individuals and families influenced government decisions for their benefit. This systemic issue led to the creation of the Zondo Commission in 2018 to investigate allegations of state capture and corruption. The Zondo Commission's findings, released in 2022, exposed widespread misconduct involving companies like Bosasa and Bain and Company, as well as the Gupta family and Zuma's associates. International concern grew, with embassies from countries like the United States, United Kingdom, Netherlands, Germany, and Switzerland issuing a joint memorandum. These nations, representing a large share of foreign investment in South Africa, warned that unchecked corruption could deter future investments. They urged action against those involved. The South African government expressed disappointment in the approach, noting it did not follow standard diplomatic practices, but the message underscored the global impact of these issues. In response to such scandals, the ANC adopted the step-aside rule, an internal policy designed to address corruption among its members. This rule requires those charged with serious crimes, including corruption, to voluntarily step back from party and government roles or face suspension. It originated from discussions at the 2015 National General Council, where debates focused on strengthening the party's Integrity Commission to handle corruption allegations. By the 2017 National Conference, where Ramaphosa was elected ANC president, the party reaffirmed the need for members involved in corrupt activities to account to the commission or face disciplinary processes. The conference directed the National Executive Committee to implement measures, including summary suspensions for those who refused to step aside. The step-aside guidelines were formalized in 2021 after consultations with legal experts to ensure they aligned with the party's constitution, national laws, and labor regulations. Key figures like Matthews Posa and Galema Motlanthe helped draft them. In essence, members facing corruption charges must appear before the Integrity Commission, step aside if indicted, and resign if convicted. The ANC's constitution allows for temporary suspensions in the organization's best interest, regulating the individual's participation during that time. This rule has been applied to high-profile cases, such as the suspension of former Secretary-General Ace Makashule, and it prevented affected members from running in internal elections in 2022. Beyond individual cases, the ANC has pledged broader reforms to combat corruption. These include ensuring ethical leadership in municipalities by removing underperforming officials, better protecting whistleblowers, insourcing jobs to avoid exploitative labor practices, and overhauling procurement systems with technology for transparency. Despite these efforts, enforcement remains weak, and corruption continues to hinder progress in areas like healthcare, where accountability is low. Surveys show that many South Africans fear retaliation for reporting corruption, with over three-quarters believing ordinary people face negative consequences for speaking out. The Phala Phala scandal has become a prime example of how these issues persist under Ramaphosa's watch, directly linking back to Mbeki's withdrawal from the national dialogue. The incident began on February 9, 2020, when a burglary occurred at Ramaphosa's private game farm in Limpopo. Thieves stole a significant amount of cash, initially reported as around $4 million in US dollars, though later estimates suggested it was closer to $580,000. The money was hidden in a couch and came from the sale of livestock, according to Ramaphosa. The suspects, aided by a domestic helper at the farm, fled to Cape Town after the theft. They exchanged the foreign currency into rand before being tracked down. Ramaphosa did not report the robbery immediately, which raised suspicions. In June 2022, former intelligence head Arthur Fraser filed charges, alleging that Ramaphosa and Major General Wally Rood, head of the Presidential Protection Unit, tried to cover it up. Fraser claimed the remaining money was returned to the suspects, named Emmanuela David, Urbanus Shambwago, Urki Shigongo, Petrus Muhegeni, and Petrus Africana, in exchange for their silence. There were also allegations of an interrogation in Namibia involving Rood, with possible assistance from Namibian authorities, though Namibia denied any role. Ramaphosa denied wrongdoing, suggesting a political motive behind the accusations, and his spokesperson questioned the timing. Opposition parties reacted swiftly. The Democratic Alliance planned to request investigations by the South African Revenue Service into whether the money was declared and taxes paid, and by the South African Reserve Bank on currency matters. ANC member Tony Yengeni, a Zuma supporter, pushed for Ramaphosa to step down, but the National Working Committee accepted Ramaphosa's report and awaited further probes. The African Transformation Movement's leader, Vuyo Zungula, tabled a motion for a parliamentary inquiry under Section 89 of the Constitution, accusing Ramaphosa of violations. The Public Protector also launched an investigation into potential criminal activities. By July 2022, details emerged that Rood had traveled to Namibia with Ramaphosa's advisor Bejeni Chauge, meeting police and using a helicopter to reach Windhoek. The South African Police Service Commissioner confirmed no theft case was opened by Ramaphosa. Instead, Rood reported it a month later. The Independent Police Investigative Directorate announced it would look into police conduct, and the Hawks gathered 41 statements for their investigation. In November 2022, a panel led by retired Chief Justice Sandile Ngcobo released a report finding prima facie evidence that Ramaphosa had violated his oath of office in handling the incident. The panel identified four serious violations, including failing to report the theft properly and potential issues with undeclared foreign currency. Ramaphosa sought judicial review of the report, maintaining his innocence, while opposition parties criticized investigations as inadequate, accusing institutions of a cover-up. The scandal dragged on, affecting Ramaphosa's credibility and the ANC's image. It contributed to a drop in public support for democracy, as shown in a 2024 survey, exacerbating problems like poverty, unemployment, and inequality. The energy crisis in South Africa has also been worsened by corruption, delaying solutions and impacting daily life. Most recently, on September 11, 2025, the National Prosecuting Authority decided not to prosecute Ramaphosa over Phala Phala, stating there was no basis for charges related to tax evasion or exchange control violations. This followed a thorough review of evidence from the Directorate for Priority Crime Investigation. The NPA's Director of Public Prosecutions made the call after assessing all available information. Reactions were immediate and sharp. The Umkhonto weSizwe Party's Deputy President, John Hlophe, called the decision nonsensical and shocking during a media briefing in Johannesburg on September 12, 2025. He argued it showed the NPA was captured and promised to raise it in Parliament. The economic freedom fighters condemned the move as part of a pattern shielding Ramaphosa from accountability. Their spokesperson highlighted how state institutions seem to protect him. The Democratic Alliance demanded more explanations, with leader John Steenhuisen insisting on greater transparency given the implications for top government levels. These developments tie directly back to Mbeki's pullout, as they underscore the corruption that he and others see as undermining initiatives like the National Dialogue. The ANC step-aside rule, meant to clean house, has not been applied to Ramaphosa despite the allegations, fueling debates about fairness. Critics argue that the same standards used against figures like Makashule should apply here, but the party's renewal efforts appear stalled. The Phala Phala affair has revealed how foreign currency dealings, unreported crimes, and alleged cover-ups can erode trust in leadership. South Africa's anti-corruption framework is strong on paper, with laws and commissions in place, but implementation lags. Whistleblowers face risks, and scandals like this one show how corruption affects social cohesion and political integrity. The Zuma-era state capture set a precedent, but current issues suggest the problems are far from resolved. International investors watch closely, as ongoing corruption could scare away funds needed for growth. The National Dialogue, despite its flaws, represented a chance to address these divides. Yet, with key voices like Mbeki absent, and scandals like Phala Phala looming, the event highlighted divisions rather than unity. In the end, these stories reveal a nation at a crossroads, where past mistakes haunt present efforts, and leaders must confront corruption head-on to rebuild faith. What are your thoughts on how the Phala Phala scandal and ongoing corruption issues are affecting the ANC's ability to lead South Africa effectively? Share your opinions in the comments below to join the conversation and help us understand different perspectives. Thanks for watching this news bulletin. Please share your opinion in the comments section. We would be glad to read and respond to your comments. Let's meet again tomorrow in our next strange story. Wishing you a fruitful and productive week ahead.